There you go.
Happy Hour is presented by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea. Please drink responsibly.
Pardon the interruption. I'm Mike Wilbon on assignment in Chicago.
I'm Tony Kornheiser, where you have an apartment and an alma mater and surely a reservation at a steakhouse. You're now going to plug. Go ahead.
I'm not yet. Tavern on Rush is reopening, Tony. Reopening. I'm not sure I can get in. I mean, it's like a few days. I can't reach anybody by phone.
Well, why don't you just go to Chicago Cut first? You're going to name that one and get a free meal. You've been doing it for years. Welcome to PTI, boys and girls. In today's episode, Kirk Cousins goes off. The Jets and Vikings kick off Sunday's NFL slate. And Tim Kirkchin joins us to preview baseball's divisional series. But we begin today with the Mets' ninth-inning rally to beat Milwaukee on Pete Alonso's three-run homer off Brewers closer Devin Williams. Milwaukee had taken a 2-0 lead in the bottom of the seventh after 6+ innings of scoreless baseball. It's a terrific game. Wilbon, what did you make of the moment and the result?
Tony, that's why you watch October baseball. For people who say, oh, baseball's boring, I just want to scream at them and say, shut up. Watch long enough and shut up. And just watch how tense it is. And that tension, when it gives way to drama late in these October games, you know there's nothing like it. Our childhood times were filled with these things. And even if there's only a handful, I'm not old enough to have seen, well, I maybe saw it, but I don't remember Bill Mazeroski hitting a home run in the World Series to beat the Yankees. But these moments that pop up in baseball, like yesterday, the thing is, it's early in the playoffs. It's not the championship series. It's not the World Series, but it's still dramatic. It's still a scream out loud moment between two teams I personally dislike. And it was unbelievable that Alonso, who'd been struggling so desperately, hit that home run. But Tone, that's October baseball. That's the October classic to me.
Yeah. I don't know that is the most dramatic home run ever hit by a Met because it's not a walk-off home run. It's as close as you can get when you're the road team. It's the top of the ninth. You're down by more than one run, and you hit this home run, and you go ahead. I mean, the Mets have been involved in astonishing games lately. This one last night, the first one in the doubleheader against Atlanta in Atlanta on Monday, when they were down in the top of the eighth, they scored 6 runs to take the lead. Atlanta came back, went ahead of them, and then your boy Lindor hit one out, and they again top of the ninth, home run. A comeback, a multi-run comeback. I just want to say one thing, Mike. 3 of the 4 lower seeds won these series. Great baseball. They won them. And all of the 4 lower seeds had important, meaningful games late in the season. Obviously, the Mets and the Braves went down to the last day to get in the playoffs. And Detroit and Kansas City had to get in with about 2 games to go. Mike, their opponents didn't have that. Baltimore didn't have that. Milwaukee didn't have that. Houston didn't have that. They were locked into their seedings. Mike, we agree on this. Baseball is an everyday game. And I think if you have meaningful games late, it's an advantage in a playoff series. I do.
Maybe so. Real quickly, does this feel like a miracle Met run to you? Before you went over and slurped the Nationals, which I just discount, for real in your life that mattered, you were a Mets fan. Does this feel like, no, it doesn't?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Really?
It doesn't quite yet. They're a very hot team right now, but the Miracle Mets had pitching, that was great, dependable pitching all the time.
Yeah, Hall of Fame pitching. We also had a very dramatic finish in the NFL last night. The Buccaneers appeared to have beaten the Falcons. I turned the TV off when Levante David intercepted Kirk Cousins with $1:44 left. But Tampa went 3 and out, and the Falcons drove and forced overtime with a 52-yard field goal. Then in OT, Kirk Cousins connected with Kadero Hodge for the win. For 45 of Cousins' 509 yards passing on the night. Tone, is it time to take Kirk Cousins and the Falcons seriously?
Okay, Mike, before the season started, the buzz about which teams could take maybe a big leap up It was concentrated on two teams, Atlanta and Green Bay. They started slowly. Atlanta started out 0-1 and then 1-2. Green Bay started out 0-1 and lost their quarterback for a little while. So that narrative was put on the shelf. Essentially, in Atlanta, it's all about Cousins. Could he come back from an Achilles tear, right? And could he be a great quarterback? And in the first game, he looked terrible. He only gained 155 yards in the air. Last night showed you what he can do and why he might be worth the money. He completed 42 passes, 28 of them to just 3 receivers who were his favorite targets on the night. He had 4 touchdown passes in the game and a ton of yards. As you mentioned, 509 yards. No Atlanta quarterbacks ever had that many, and Cousins at 3 different teams had never had that many. Look, they got a great running back. They got pretty good receivers. The only thing that held them back last year was the lack of a quarterback. Maybe they have one.
Yeah, Tony, what was amazing to me about Cousins is, and he admitted this, and you could see it when they ISO'd, all these games that Cousins has played in, he's not planting on his back foot. They go back to him planting on that right leg and just, shoving off it in a beautiful form, classic throwing form, weight shifting, back foot to front. He can't do that yet. His back foot is coming off the grass, is off the turf, because the Achilles is not allowing him to do what he's done all his life. And so for him to go for 500-plus yards last night and make some of the throws he made tough throws into tight windows. I got nothing but admiration. I'm going to go beyond respect for a guy who's had an injury which ends lots of careers. And not only is he not letting it end his, he's playing right through it the best he can and compensates in whatever way he can. Amazing to me that Cousins is doing this. Amazing.
I'll tell you this. I heard an amazing stat today. I hope it's true. They've won 3 games this year. They've been behind in all 3 in the final minute.
Yes.
They've been behind.
He's down all the time.
A lot of that's Cousins.
Unbelievable.
A lot of that's Cousins. Let's stay in the NFL and look forwards instead of backwards. Wilbon, I'm going to let you look at the entire slate of this weekend's games, which begins 9:30 Sunday morning in London with the Jets and Vikings. And I'm going to let you tell me which is the most intriguing game of the weekend.
Well, I'm trying to figure out whether I'm going to, play a few holes of golf with Matthew or watch Jets-Vikings at 9:30 in the morning. Buffalo-Houston, that's got some intrigue. These are 2 teams, each of which thinks we can beat the Chiefs. But you got a long season to play before you get to that, and there's a lot of intrigue and storylines for both those teams. And then you have another matchup that we have come to like whenever we see it, Baltimore-Cincy, Ravens-Bengals. The Bengals are still in this position where they are down on the season. They got to fight their way back into this. They don't seem to be the team that so many predicted they would be coming out of training camp. They get off to slow starts every year, but this seems slower than most at 1-3.
Yeah.
Tony, if I got to pick between those 3, I think I may surprise you and say Baltimore-Cincy, because I think it's possible that the Ravens could be the best team in the league. I know Kansas City is undefeated. I know that's not the case for Baltimore, which lost its first 2, but I think Baltimore could be the best team. I'm interested in that game with Cincy because there's a whiff of urgency, if not desperation, in the air for those 2, even though they're really good.
I will concede that I am really surprised that you didn't go Carolina and the Bears, and that you didn't say this is a referendum on their big trade, and here's the number 1 draft pick, and maybe even mention Gonzaga High School. I thought you'd go there. I will mention the Jets and the Vikings in this sense. If the Jets lose this game, I don't think we have to talk about them anymore. On that same vein, if I'll mention Dallas at Pittsburgh, if the Cowboys lose, I don't think we have to talk about them anymore. Yeah. I agree with you on the game in Houston, because although both those teams, Buffalo and Houston, are 3-1, they got pounded lately. Each one of them. Minnesota pounded Houston and Baltimore pounded Buffalo. So I am with you that it is Baltimore against Cincinnati, at Cincinnati. Cincinnati's already lost at home to New England, a bad team. They lost to Washington, a surprising team at this point, but they are 1-3. And Mike, I think in a division game, if they go 1-4, I think they're done. I do. I think they have to have tremendous urgency. I think it's a must game for them. And I agree with you about Baltimore in this regard. If Baltimore wins this game, I think they are certified as prime goods in the NFL. A real contender. So this is the game. This is the game that jumps out at me too. It does. Yeah. It really does. Let's take a break. Coming up, what sort of a challenge do the Royals present to the Yankees? We will ask Tim Kirkjian.
We'll also ask him what intrigues him most about Padres, Dodgers. Tony, what would Get Up and First Take do if they don't have the Jets and the Cowboys?
Back to Pardon the Interruption, presented by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, part of Happy Hour.
Baseball's divisional series start tomorrow, which makes it a perfect time to welcome back our great friend, ESPN baseball analyst Tim Kirkjian, who joins us literally from a random hallway in Yankee Stadium. He found a spot to sit down, and here he is. So let's start with this. You're at Yankee Stadium, obviously, for the Yankees and the Royals. The Yankees are by far the starrier team. There's no question about that. Big stars. What challenges, though, do the Royals present for the Yankees?
Well, the Royals have 4 really good starting pitchers that just dominated the Orioles. They scored 1 run in 2 games in Baltimore. Plus, they have a closer in Lucas Erceg who throws 100 miles an hour with a great changeup. Salvador Perez, their catcher, is probably going to be in the Hall of Fame one day. And Bobby Witt Jr., their shortstop, is one of the best players in the game. He's going to finish second in the MVP this year. Plus, they are a young, hungry team. They put the ball in play more than any team in the American League, and then they just run. They are a pain in the neck to play, as the Orioles can tell you.
Tim, of course, my Cubbies are nowhere near the postseason, so I am just reveling in the Midwest matchup between the Tigers and Guardians. The Tigers were deadline sellers. How in the heck are they still in this, and how do you see the matchup between Cleveland and Detroit?
I'm not sure how they're still in this, Michael, but that's part of their allure. They don't have a guy with 25 homers. They don't have a guy with 75 RBIs or 25 steals. They are so anonymous in so many ways that it's hard to match up against them. A.J. Hinch, their manager, is a genius when it comes to strategy, and you just can't figure out what his lineup's going to look like, what his bench is going to look like, how he's going to use his bullpen. That team is so unpredictable. They're really hard to match up against, and they took it to the Astros for 2 games in that series. I covered that, and I left thinking the Tigers are a dangerous team because you can't figure out what they're going to do next.
Well, there is certainly no anonymity in my favorite series, which is Padres-Dodgers, just this titanic clash, it seems to me. Tim, what are you looking forward to in that? And if there's anybody you favor, tell us.
Well, the Padres are really good, fellas. They've been the best team in baseball for me the second half of the year.
The Jets versus the Vikings across the pond. It's going to be Brian Flores and his attacking defense that always is in a too high with vision to break against a Jets offense and Aaron Rodgers that struggled against the Denver Broncos last week. And if you think he wasn't making sure that the operation was operating this week, then you're out of your mind. Is he good enough to find some of those holes in the defense and make some plays? And just a little foreshadowing, me and Dan will tackle this later.
I want to see it is very well matched against the Bengals defense. It's going to be incumbent upon Burrow and Chase in particular to carry this one. Ravens defense is excellent. We saw that last week. However, they have been weak against number 1 wide receivers. Can Jamar Chase find a way to get activated downfield against this defense? If so, this could be a fun game.
I'm going to Colts in Jacksonville. You talk about some pressure on certain quarterbacks. Anthony Richardson, are you going to play? Are you healthy enough? Joe Flacco comes off the bench last week and leads your team to a win. And then Trevor Lawrence, the play just hasn't been there. And you want to mention or talk about, like, hey, a must-win game. It feels like it's been that way in Jacksonville for a month. Can Anthony Richardson play a full football game where he's the most dominant player on the field? And can Trevor Lawrence have some form of a win in Jacksonville?
A lot to talk about there.
Cisco, instead, they actually get the spike down.
Yeah, great operation by everybody on their offense to at least give Koo the chance to make that kick.
All right, the clutch field goal by Koo sends it to overtime. It was 52 yards. And here you're going to see a big play from Cordero Hodge. Breaks the tackle, gets it to the end zone.
RC, did you feel a little bit last night was just the Bucs just missed tackles on their defense, unlike that defensive unit?
Yeah, Baker Mayfield doesn't look happy, and there goes Kirk. Swag surfing up top when it should be down low.
Oh, let's see that again. Kirk Cousins set the Falcons' single-game record with 509 passing yards, shredded up a Bucs defense that struggled to defend the middle of the field, and Cousins finished the night with 3 touchdowns for 371 yards on passes between the numbers. That's the third most passing yards between the numbers in a game since 2006, when ESPN began tracking directions after Matt Schaub and Donovan McNabb in 2010. RC, what stood out to you most about Kirk Cousins' performance last night, aside from the swag surfing or lack thereof?
Yeah, I mean, the swag surfing really fits who he is, right? I would think that Dan would swag surf very similar, except for it would be 7 feet tall by the time he raises his hands up. I'm going to talk about Zach Robinson. We were very hard on Zach week 1 and talking about some of the lack of creativity, saying he should get Kirk Cousins under center, only using a certain part of the field with all the condensed splits. I felt like he spread the football out, and he also found guys in spaces where they could make plays. Drake London operated in between the numbers a little bit more. We saw Darnell Mooney outside the numbers, and he was sort of the guy that they would use on the timing routes. Also getting Kyle Pitts involved. It was the most decisive I felt that Kirk Cousins had been throughout the season, and I feel like Zach Robinson, in the way that he game planned against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, truly helped against that.
Yeah, it's a great point. It was one of those games where on the TV broadcast, you were constantly seeing Kirk Cousins and then seeing a player and asking, why is he so wide open downfield versus Tampa's zone coverage? And then when you saw on tape, a lot of it had to do with what Zach Robinson did. I thought it was really impressive that they were able to get to that downfield passing game over the middle of the field without using under center play action, because he's still clearly not comfortable with that. Got to it a number of ways. I thought the way they used motion and alignment to get some favorable matchups was really impressive. Dan mentioned the top, Drake London in the slot. They had him matched up on linebackers and safeties throughout the game. And then beyond the scheme, Cousins himself. I mean, part of the reason they were open was because he was manipulating second and third level defenders to create those throwing windows. And he was standing there in the pocket and just ripping it a few times with pressure in his face. I think if you're a Falcons fan, the performance from Robinson and the performance from Kirk Cousins has to be extremely encouraging.
Yeah, so Atlanta has one of the best pass-catching duos in the NFL at wide receiver. I just am surprised the way it plays itself out. Mooney has become really the outside guy, which I did not expect. And Drake London, who I thought would be the outside guy, has really become the inside guy. Mina, you mentioned, RC, you know it, that choice route. This reminds me so much of Brandon Marshall, that big body frame that also is so smart in understanding the feel of a defense at the top of the screen. This time they're going to stutter him like he's going to fake that in route. Yeah. And Kirk really throws like a back shoulder slot fade versus a quarter safety, which is so unlike offenses. Again, top of the screen, look at his feel at the top of the route here. That sit in the zone is so ideal. To have a receiver that has that big frame, but that basketball understanding, yet also, like, right there, that's the same choice route that he scores on. But RC, he sees that outside defender and that inside defender, and instead of making the angle or slant route, sits. I did not expect that Drake London would really become like that possession receiver for this football team. If they get that out of him and Mooney continues to wear people out with his routes outside, this offense
you took my thought right from me with the basketball understanding of a big man or of a guard trying to find space in order to get a shot off.
Yeah, you know, like we talk about basketball, it's like the rebound, just the jump ball, but I think you're putting the space understanding.
Exactly. It's just feel, right? Like when you watch Steph Curry, it's like, do I go over the screen or can I pop the pick? Certain things like that. And I thought Drake London showed a great understanding of that last night.
Hey, if the Falcons end up in more of these games that are tight at the end, they know how to win them. I thought this was interesting, guys. The Falcons are the first team in NFL history with 3 wins within the first 5 games of a season after trailing in the final minute of the fourth quarter. They got it done. More on this later, but how about the next matchup that we have to get to? Stephon Diggs did not have to wait long to face his former team as the Bills travel to Houston this weekend, and Diggs was traded over the offseason after 4 years in Buffalo where he had at least 1,000 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns touchdowns in every season. And we really didn't know what to expect from Josh Allen and the Bills after Diggs' departure in the offseason, but Allen certainly hasn't dropped off. He's leading the NFL in total QBR and has 9 combined passing and rushing touchdowns, the third most in the NFL. Not to mention, Allen has also only turned the ball over twice, his fewest turnovers through 4 weeks of the season in his career. Dan, how do you expect the Bills to attack this Houston defense?
Right, Adam. There's one thing you do not want to do against Houston, go sideline to sideline. If you think that you're going, it's San Francisco.
Yeah.
If you think that you're going to get sideline to sideline or lateral against this defense, absolutely no shot. They're too fast. They're too athletic. You got to go downhill at this football team because they run to the football so well. Really, that first and second unit, there's got to be traps. There's got to be whams. There's got to be an aggressive downhill zone concept. If you can do that and tell your backs, it is not a jab step. It is you are following in the seam, kind of RC what we mean what we call the midline.
Yeah.
Like down in between that center and guard is where you want to hit this run game. If Buffalo does that, they'll have some success. If they think that they're going to turn this into a track meet side to side, Houston will run them out.
Yeah, the Texans this year have matched 12 personnel, meaning 2 tight ends on the field entirely with nickel. So just 2 linebackers. If they do that, these Bills will run on them exactly as you described. And I think over the course of the game, if you wear them out, that's going to open things over the middle of the field, which is another area where, of course, the Bills have been thriving. And the Texans have struggled. They're actually 28th in QBR and throws between the numbers. You know how you avoid Derek Stingley Jr.? You don't throw at him. That is what I would do in this game. I would run the ball out of 12 personnel and throw to those 2 big tight ends off of play action. That, to me, is the brand of Buffalo Bills football we have been seeing for much of the season. And I think it's going to serve them well in this game.
RC, what about the other side of the ball? The Bills are going to be without Von Miller. He was suspended due to violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. How do you think that affects them?
I think it does affect them because Von Miller has been winning in one-on-one opportunities throughout this season, especially, early when you think about his pressures on the quarterback. But go back to that Jacksonville game and look at some of those simulated pressures or think about some of the fire zones we've seen in 5-man rushes. They're going to have to do a lot of that to get those one-on-ones and create pressure on C.J. Stroud. And if you have watched the Houston Texans and you just don't pay attention to the scoreboard or C.J. Stroud's stat line, he's been absolutely under siege the entire season, creating plays with his legs, being great on third down. But they have not protected him well. And so if you can get to C.J. Stroud, put pressure on him, get him off of his spot, and make it a little more difficult for him, I think that's the best chance the Bills have to match this great wide receiving core. So much conversation has been about Stephon Diggs' revenge game against Josh Allen. The hell with Stephon Diggs. Yeah, he could still play, but you got to go out there and cover Nico Collins, right? You got to find a way to stop him. And the best way to do that is to try to put pressure on C.J. Stroud, because when you don't, he will dice you up.
Hold on, Ruddy, before we do game picks, just Charles Barkley said we got to stop doing basketball analogies when we were talking about Drake London.
What?
Oh, that's
Dan, are you?
We got the commercial
He was
break
an
to
actual
figure that out.
basketball player, though.
Yeah, I told him he's got
Are
the
you
Charles
name
Barkley
dropping?
feel.
That's because Charles
dropping.
ain't never find a hole in the zone. He just tried to dunk on people and fight.
Did it well.
He was very good at it.
Did it well.
It's
By
better
the
than he
way,
is at golf.
thanks to Charles Barkley for watching the show. And Dan, do not think that I did not notice your little name drop there. You
Good
texted
job,
him with
Dan.
Charles Barkley. We got it. Cool, Dan. All right, look at this. We're even split on our game picks here. Mina and I going with the Bills. Dan and Ryan going with the Texans. Love to see it. All right, let's continue on here. We got more game picks, by the way.